Today we are going to talk about one of the greatest and most mysterious civilizations of the ancient world. A people that emerged long before many of the best-known cultures of Mesoamerica, built sacred centers, created colossal stone monuments, and left behind mysteries that scholars still cannot fully explain. What if one small artifact could change the way we see the ancient world? What if, in the tropical lowlands of what are now Veracruz and Tabasco, there once existed a civilization whose knowledge and symbolism were far more advanced than many assume? When people think of lost knowledge and ancient mysteries, they usually think of Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, or the Maya. But hidden in the shadow of those famous civilizations was a people many researchers consider one of the earliest complex cultures in Mesoamerica. These were the Olmecs. The Olmecs are widely recognized as one of the earliest major civilizations of Mesoamerica. For decades, they have fascinated archaeologists because the evidence reveals a society with remarkable artistic skill, social organization, and religious symbolism. Their influence can be seen in later cultures across the region, even though much about them remains uncertain. Most people know the Olmecs for their giant stone heads. These massive basalt sculptures are among the most striking works of ancient America. Each one reflects extraordinary planning and labor, since the stone had to be quarried, transported across difficult terrain, and carefully carved. Even today, they are deeply impressive. But the stone heads are only the beginning. Archaeologists have uncovered ceremonial centers such as San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes, where the Olmecs built large ritual spaces and produced refined objects from jade, stone, and ceramics. These discoveries show that this was not a simple or isolated culture, but a highly organized society with a rich symbolic world. Among the most intriguing finds are objects made from iron-rich minerals, including magnetite. Some researchers have suggested that certain polished magnetic objects may have been used for orientation. If true, this could offer a rare glimpse into how the Olmecs understood the natural properties of their environment. However, this remains only a hypothesis. Archaeologists have not reached a consensus that these objects were actually compasses, and their exact purpose is still unknown. They may instead have had ritual, symbolic, or status-related functions. Even so, the fact that this idea is taken seriously shows how much we still have to learn about the Olmecs. And that is only part of the story. The Olmecs are also linked to the early development of rubber processing in Mesoamerica, including the making of balls for ritual games. They are associated with some of the earliest monumental traditions in the region. Another controversial object tied to the Olmec world is the cascajal block, a stone slab marked with symbols. Some scholars believe it may represent an early writing system, while others remain cautious because both its interpretation and archaeological context are still debated. So, why are the Olmecs less famous than the Egyptians or the Maya? One reason is preservation. The humid conditions of Mexico's Gulf Coast have damaged or hidden much of the archaeological evidence, while other sites remain buried beneath soil and dense vegetation. As a result, modern archaeology, including remote sensing and geophysical surveys, continues to reveal new information about this ancient civilization. The Olmecs may not give us simple answers, but they offer something even more exciting: evidence that one of the earliest civilizations of the Americas was far more complex, inventive, and influential than many once believed. The deeper archaeologists explore their world, the clearer it becomes. The Olmecs are not just a footnote in history. They are one of its greatest unsolved mysteries.
The Inca Civilization, once the largest empire in South America, stretched from the high Andes to the Pacific coast, from mountain valleys to tropical forests. They were remarkable builders, organizers, agricultural innovators, and rulers. But how could such a prosperous and advanced empire disappear in just a few years? This remains one of the most astonishing mysteries in world history. If we pause for a moment, the Inca Empire, in scale and organization, could rival many of the great powers of history. So how did its roads, terraces, cities, economy, and political order collapse so quickly? To understand this, we must look not only at outside forces, but also at the inner structure of the civilization itself. its philosophy, religion, and political system. Everything began around 6 centuries ago. Around the year 1438, a young ruler named Pachacuti transformed the Incas from a small kingdom into a vast and powerful state. He was not only a conqueror, but also a brilliant strategist, architect, and organizer. Under his leadership, the Incas expanded across territories that now include Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, and even parts of Chile. The Incas lived in extremely difficult natural conditions. Much of their empire lay in mountainous regions over 3,000 meters above sea level. The environment was harsh and the climate unpredictable. Yet the Incas did not merely survive. They created one of the most efficient agricultural systems of their age. On mountain slopes, they built terraced fields where they grew potatoes, maize, and quinoa. This system allowed them to farm in extreme conditions and maintain a stable food supply. Their economy was equally unusual. The Incas did not use money in the familiar sense. Instead, they relied on a labor system known as mita. Every person in the empire was required to perform work for the benefit of the state, whether in farming, road construction, military service, or other public duties. The Incas also created a vast network of storage facilities and resource redistribution, helping them support the population and control a huge territory. They were also exceptional engineers. Their road network stretched for more than 40,000 kilometers, linking mountains, valleys, and coastal regions. These roads made trade, communication, and military movement possible across enormous distances. Stone complexes such as Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman still amaze the world with their precision and sophistication. Astronomy also played a major role in Inca life. By observing the stars and celestial cycles, they could determine the right times for planting and harvesting. This knowledge helped them adapt to high-altitude conditions and secure food production. The Incas did not develop alphabetic writing. Instead, they used a system known as quipu, cords with knots used for recording and transmitting information. Through quipu, they could track population, taxes, supplies, and other administrative matters. Although it was not writing in the usual sense, it was an effective method of governance. Religion stood at the center of Inca society. Their chief deity was Inti, the sun god, worshipped throughout the empire. The Incas believed that their ruler, the Sapa Inca, was a descendant of Inti and therefore sacred. Priests were among the most educated and respected members of society. They led rituals that could last for days. Some ceremonies involved animal sacrifice, and in certain cases, human sacrifice. These rites were not only religious acts, but also means of reinforcing social unity and state power. Yet behind this strength were deep vulnerabilities. In 1532, only a few decades after the empire's great rise, its collapse began. That year, Francisco Pizarro arrived with a small Spanish force. At first glance, it seems impossible that just a few hundred men could conquer such a vast empire. But by then, the Inca state was already in crisis. One of the main causes was epidemic disease, especially smallpox, brought from Europe. These diseases spread through South America even before the Spanish reached the heart of the empire. They caused demographic collapse, disrupted economic life, and created political instability. Many historians believe that the death of Huayna Capac and the succession crisis that followed were linked to these epidemics. Then came the civil war between Atahualpa and Huáscar. This conflict drained resources, divided the ruling elite, and weakened the unity of the state. When the Spanish intervened, they faced not a strong and united empire, but one already fractured, with some local groups willing to support foreign invaders against central authority. The capture of Atahualpa became a turning point because Inca power was highly centralized and heavily dependent on the figure of the supreme ruler. His imprisonment struck at the heart of the entire system. The Spanish exploited this with devastating effectiveness. Modern archaeologists and historians agree that the fall of the Inca Empire cannot be explained by a single cause. It was the result of several interconnected forces. epidemics, civil war, political crisis, foreign invasion, and the vulnerabilities of a highly centralized state. The same system that made the empire strong in times of order made it fragile in times of upheaval. At the same time, research does not support the idea that environmental collapse or agricultural failure was the main reason for the empire's destruction before the arrival of the Spanish. On the contrary, terraces, irrigation, and food storage systems show just how well adapted the Incas were to their environment. And still, perhaps the greatest mystery is not why they fell, but how they managed to build such a powerful civilization in one of the most difficult landscapes on Earth. Without iron tools, without wheeled transport in practical use, and without conventional writing, they built roads through mountains, cities that endured for centuries, and a state system that still astonishes historians. Today, the ruins of the Incas are more than stones from the past. They are the traces of a vast world in which every road, every terrace, and every temple formed part of a single grand idea. And the more archaeologists learn about the Incas, the clearer it becomes. This was not a vanished civilization, but a legacy that still speaks to us through stone, mountains, and time.
After the Spanish conquest, centralized Inca rule fragmented across the Andes.
Cusco, once the political center of the Inca Empire, became a major colonial city under Spanish rule.
In Cusco, many colonial structures were built using or above earlier Inca stonework.
After losing Cusco, members of the Inca royal line maintained a reduced state in Vilcabamba. Vilcabamba became the center of the Neo-Inca state, which survived for several decades after the conquest.
In 1572, Spanish forces defeated the Neo-Inca state in Vilcabamba.
The capture and execution of Tupac Amaru I marked the end of independent Inca dynastic rule. The former Inca realm was incorporated into the institutions of Spanish colonial rule.
Some indigenous nobles retained limited status under colonial law, though their political power was sharply reduced. In early colonial Peru, the encomienda linked conquest to tribute and labor demands placed on indigenous communities. Colonial authorities required many Andean communities to provide tribute in goods, labor, or money. Colonial authorities reorganized many communities into planned settlements known as reducciones.
Spanish authorities adapted earlier Andean labor obligations into the colonial mita, especially for mining and related work.
For many communities, colonial labor obligations meant travel far from home to major mining zones. Silver production in the Andes became a major source of wealth for the Spanish Empire. In many areas, agricultural terraces built in the Inca period continued to be used after the conquest. Political change did not eliminate long-established Andean agricultural knowledge.
Spanish rule included sustained efforts to spread Catholicism across the former Inca realm.
Some places of earlier ritual importance were redefined under colonial Christianity.
Despite conversion campaigns, some earlier Andean practices continued in adapted forms.
Quechua continued to be widely spoken in the colonial Andes.
The post-conquest Andes developed into a colonial society, structured by hierarchy, ethnic categories, and unequal access to power.
European livestock altered land use and rural life in many parts of the Andes. Epidemic disease contributed to major population decline in the Andes during the colonial period. Conquest, disease, and labor demands disrupted settlement patterns and older systems of exchange. Colonial Cusco developed over the earlier capital of the Inca state. Inca stonework remained visible in colonial Cusco and still survives today. Textile traditions continued after the conquest, though production was increasingly shaped by colonial demands and exchange.
Long-established Andean crops remained essential to everyday life after the conquest.
Many routes created in the Inca period continued to be used under colonial rule.
Indigenous labor was essential to the construction and maintenance of colonial infrastructure in the Andes.
Many indigenous communities used colonial legal systems to defend land, labor rights, and status. Colonial rule altered land control and increased pressure on communal resources in many Andean areas.
Over time, haciendas became important in parts of the Andes, reshaping rural labor and landholding. In many communities, public religious life came to combine Catholic forms with local Andean practices.
Knowledge of the Inca past survived not only in chronicles, but also in oral tradition.
Colonial rule in the Andes was repeatedly challenged by unrest and rebellion.
Claims of Inca descent continued to matter in parts of colonial Andean society.
Much of the surviving written record about the Incas comes from colonial-era authors with different perspectives and agendas.
Over time, some Inca sites remained in use, while others fell into partial ruin.
Machu Picchu did not become a major center of colonial administration and remained relatively isolated. The conquest transformed Andean political authority, social organization, and cultural life, rather than eliminating them entirely.
For centuries after the conquest, Andean societies continued under colonial conditions that were changing, uneven, and deeply hierarchical. The end of Spanish colonial rule did not restore the Inca state, but memory of the Inca past remained influential.
In modern Peru, the legacy of the Inca world survives in archaeology, language, identity, and public memory.
Quechua remains a living language in the Andes and one of the strongest continuities linking the present to the Inca world.
Inca engineering survived the fall of the state and remains visible across the Andes today. The Incas disappeared as a ruling empire, but not as peoples, languages, memories, or cultural legacies. After the conquest, the Andes lost an imperial state, a ruling dynasty, and many institutional foundations of Inca political life.
What continued was not the Inca Empire, but Andean peoples, languages, landscape.
The Keeladi civilization is one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of modern India, capable of fundamentally changing our understanding of the ancient history of the region. This archaeological site, located in Tamil Nadu along the Vaigai River, holds traces of a developed society that existed over 2,500 years ago. Excavations, which began in 2014 under the guidance of the Tamil Nadu Department of Archaeology, have already yielded thousands of artifacts pointing to a high level of urbanization, technology, and culture. From the very beginning, it became clear that Keeladi was no ordinary ancient settlement. Radiocarbon dating of organic remains, including charcoal and bones, showed that active life here began as early as the 6th century BCE, possibly even earlier. This places Keeladi as a contemporary of the later phase of the Indus Valley civilization and challenges the previous notion that urbanization in India was concentrated solely in the north. One of the key discoveries was the advanced urban planning. Archaeologists found remains of brick-built buildings, carefully planned streets, drainage systems, and circular terracotta wells. These wells were vertically arranged ceramic rings used for water filtration and storage. Such engineering solutions indicate an understanding of hydrology and sanitation. Floors of houses were covered with lime mortar, and roofs based on the findings were made from durable terracotta tiles. All this is well documented in archaeological reports and considered a reliable fact. Equally important was the discovery of writing. Over 1,000 fragments of pottery with inscriptions in Tamil Brahmi were found at Keeladi. These inscriptions date back to the 6th to 5th centuries BCE and are confirmed by epigraphic studies. The fact that writing appears on everyday pottery rather than just ritual or elite objects suggests that literacy may have been relatively widespread. While it cannot be said that everyone could write, archaeologists agree that literacy was accessible to a significant portion of the population. Keeladi's economy was also impressive in its diversity. Spindle whorls and tools for textile production were found, pointing to a developed textile industry. There is evidence of fabric dyeing, which indicates the technological complexity of the process. The ceramics, particularly the distinctive black and red pottery, were made in specialized kilns at controlled temperatures. Metal items include iron tools, knives, jewelry, and even early forms of coins. This confirms the existence of both internal and external trade. Some researchers suggest that Keeladi could have been part of a broader trade network connecting the south with the north of India. Social and cultural life is also of great interest. Among the finds are terracotta figurines, gaming dice, ornaments, and objects likely used by children. This points to leisure activities and a certain level of social stability. Interestingly, no temples or religious idols were found at Keeladi. This does not mean an absence of faith, but suggests possible differences in religious practices. They may have been animistic or did not require the construction of permanent cultic structures. This conclusion is based on the absence of material evidence and is considered a scientific hypothesis. The remains of animals, including cows, buffalo, goats, and pigs, confirm developed agriculture and animal husbandry. This provided a stable economic base that supported population growth and the development of crafts. Keeladi is also important in a broader historical context. Nearby, there are other archaeological sites, Kontagai, Agram, and Manalur, which form a unified cultural complex. This proves that South India had a network of interconnected settlements with shared economy and culture. These findings challenge the view that ancient India developed only in the Indus Valley. The scientific credibility of all these findings is supported by archaeological reports, radiocarbon dating, and publications in peer-reviewed journals. However, it is important to understand that some conclusions, for example, about the extent of literacy or religious practices, are based on the interpretation of indirect data. This is common in archaeology, where direct evidence is not always available. Besides its scientific significance, Keeladi also has cultural and political importance. For Dravidian people, this discovery confirmed the ancient roots of their culture and writing system. At the same time, the research sparked discussions within the scientific and political spheres as they challenged traditional historical narratives focused on northern India. There were even reports of delays in publishing and debates surrounding the interpretation of the data, highlighting the sensitivity of the issue. Today, excavations continue, and with each new season, researchers find more evidence that Keeladi was not just a settlement, but a fully developed urban centre with advanced infrastructure, economy, and culture. This site is becoming a key to understanding how ancient India really developed. Keeladi is not just an archaeological site, it is a reminder that history is much more complex than it seems, and that beneath the layers of earth, there may lie civilizations that could change our understanding of the past.